Thank you. The question is that this bill be now read a second time. I call the member for Mallee.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Before I begin a discussion of the migration amendment, I want to talk about a panel I was invited to join for the E61 Institute with the members for Wentworth and Fraser this morning in order to discuss the report of the E61 Institute, which they launched today, The Lucky Country or the Lucky City. I was proud, as the member for Mallee and the Nationals, to fly the flag for regional Australia. The E61 report confirms that while there is a wage premium living in the inner city, the lower income of workers in regional Australia may actually not go as far, depending, for instance, on the housing situation in that locality. The report makes the point for industrial and care and service workers who, it says, and I quote, have for some time experienced higher wages net of housing costs in the regional areas than in the city. The report goes on to say for these workers, the incentive to stay in or move to the city has been weakening. However, I'm sorry to add that in some parts of Mallee, under the Albanese Labor Government, the cost of housing, buying a home or renting, has gone through the roof also, just like the cost of living, which combines to make it harder to secure the workforce in the health sector, in agriculture and across the board that we desperately need. A recent Suburbs Trends report called the Rental Pain Index showed 5 of the 12 councils from my electorate in the top 20 for the worst pain rental, with Northern Grampians Shire sadly in second place and Swan Hill in fourth place. With the trend of formerly city-based workers heading to the regions, E61's report notes, and I quote, "It will be important that regional housing supply can adjust to accommodate the additional demand without upward pressure on housing costs that could create inequality within the regions," as we are already seeing, in fact, in Mallee. Deputy Speaker, I note the Master Builders of Australia have said in their submission to the Senate inquiry into this bill, and I quote, "Master Builders has long advocated for migration settings that ensure Australia is attracting the right skills. Unfortunately, the federal government's policy framework and immigration mechanisms are not kind to migrants who are skilled in building and construction trades. Visas are very difficult to secure, costly and come with long processing times. The skills recognition process is cumbersome, costly, slow and in some cases completely unnecessary. The exclusion of trades occupations from skilled migration is a surefire way to exacerbate the housing shortage across the country. With an ageing workforce and booming demand for housing and infrastructure, the Master Builders Association anticipates that at least 500,000 people must enter the industry by 2029. No fewer than 2/3 of these new entrants will need to be skilled tradespeople, just to maintain business as usual. However, securing visas for these critical workers is already a Herculean task. Difficult to secure, costly and plagued by long processing times. We are in a national housing crisis, with 1.2 million new homes needed to be built between now and June 2029. In the September quarter of 2024 alone, 90,000 new workers are needed to build 60,000 new homes nationwide. The Master Builders' sentiments are similar to those my constituents expressed to me with increasing frequency. Mallee farmers and small to medium-sized business owners rely heavily on skilled migrants to fill critical gaps. Whether it's tradespeople, doctors, nurses, teachers or agricultural workers, migrants are the ones who keep the engine running. But this bill treats these essential workers like spare parts that can be swapped out at will, rather than the vital cogs that keep the machine of regional Australia turning. Last year in October, I spoke briefly in the House as Deputy Chair of the Parliamentary Joint Standing Committee on Migration on the tabling of our 2-year report, Migration Pathway to Nation Building, which I must say we were doing and in process of when the Labor government also announced a review by Michael Parkinson. I'm proud to say a significant number of the recommendations from our report are specific to regional Australia, starting at recommendation 56, calling for greater uniformity in migration laws and regulation concerning regional Australia. As Shadow Assistant Minister for Regional Health, I particularly emphasise recommendation 60, which urges the government to scale incentives to foster the long-term settlement of healthcare professionals in outer regional and remote areas. One of the most pressing concerns in Mallee and regional Australia is the shortage of healthcare professionals. Regional healthcare is crucial to the survival and economic growth of regional communities. Working families do not want to move to a country area where they cannot receive adequate health care. It's no surprise. In the short to medium term, international medical professionals are essential to regional healthcare services, bringing not only their skills and expertise, but also a deep commitment to serving communities that are often underserviced. Yet, as one South African couple, both medical doctors, told the Leader of the Nationals, David Littleproud, and myself during a visit in the south of my electorate in Mallee, it cost them $280,000 to come and practice in Australia. Regional Australia's dire health workforce needs have been exacerbated by Labor's misguided changes to the distribution priority areas, adding modified Monash model to areas like the outer suburban areas of capital cities. This policy shift robbed genuinely rural and remote regions of the doctors they desperately need, leading to a 56% increase in doctors leaving the regions within the first 6 months. International medical professionals face hurdles in the registration process, with the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency, AHPRA, in Mallee, I've assisted healthcare providers advocating to expedite the inordinate processing delays for these professionals. In some communities, patients rely on one doctor. Denying medical care to hundreds or thousands of regional Australians due to bureaucratic red tape is dangerous for people's health and frustrating for the doctors whose ability to practice is jeopardised. Deputy Speaker, this bill could make the situation worse by creating additional compliance requirements for sponsors, potentially leading to even longer delays in bringing skilled medical professionals to our regions. AHPRA must be held accountable for these delays, and the government must take immediate action to address inefficiencies in the system. Australia also faces a critical shortage of at least 110,000 direct aged care workers within the next decade, with an annual shortfall of 30,000 to 35,000, according to the Centre for Economic Development Australia. If these shortages persist, we won't have enough workers to meet the basic care standards recommended by the Royal Commission. With low-skilled migration levels and a sector attrition rate of around 65,000 people per year, the situation is dire. Regional areas like my electorate are hit hardest by these shortages. What's bleak in the city is even more severe in regional Australia. The nation-building report noted on sponsorship that the Law Council, and I quote, "The Law Council highlighted inflexibility and opacity in the employer-sponsored visa program that impedes the ability of businesses to attract and retain workers to service their needs." They called for better communication and assistance to sponsoring employers to help navigate the complexity and ensure the lodging of decision-ready applications and ultimately contribute to a more streamlined process." End quote. As I said at the tabling of the nation-building report, the Master Builders also queried whether regional sponsors ought to be exempt from paying for the Skilling Australia's fund. And I repeat what I said then, that there is some force to this submission. For agriculture, the nation-building report noted, and I again quote, "The National Farmers Federation drew attention to the significant costs associated with skills shortage visas, encompassing visa fees, assistance from migration agents or other experts, and the requirement for sponsoring employers to contribute to the Skilling Australians Fund. While acknowledging some of the costs were understandable, others, they believed, could be minimised through simplification and streamlining, and in so doing reduce visa processing cost and the need to engage migration experts." End quote. Recruiting farm labour has always been a challenge, with 57% of farms struggling to find adequate workers. Skilled workers have been instrumental in filling these gaps. Farmers face significant challenges in securing enough workers during peak seasons. The potential penalties for non-compliance are deterring some farmers from participating in sponsorship schemes altogether. The Senate Legal and Constitutional Affairs Legislation Committee concluded its review of this bill in September, and I highlight Senator Scarr's additional comments to that report. The Albanese Labor Government significantly hiked the TSMIT, Temporary Skilled Migration Income threshold, from $53,900 to $70,000, and again this July to $73,150. Small businesses in the Mallee electorate are shocked at what they must now pay to secure workers. Senator Scarr noted that this bill proposes changing the TSMIT to 3 other thresholds, the specialist, core and essential skills income thresholds, with the aim of reducing the likelihood of a skilled migrant displacing an Australian worker. That reads like something written by the unions. And here we are in a relatively full employment economy where regional Victoria has the nation's lowest unemployment rate of 3.9%. The Victorian Labor Government has been celebrating regional Victoria's low unemployment rate, for instance, welcomed with fanfare when it was as low as 2.4% in September 2023. According to the Victorian Government's 3-month average figures, regional unemployment is as low as 1.2% in Warrnambool and southwest Victoria and 1.3% in Shepparton. However, I have to emphasise that it's actually 5.4% in my electorate of Mallee and the same in Gippsland. Deputy Speaker, regional Australia is the backbone of our nation, contributing the farmers, the builders and the engineers of our prosperity, feeding and clothing the nation and the world. I made these very points recently, marking the centenary celebrations at Robinvale, where I had also taken the Migration Committee during our 2-year report deliberations. Migrants of Italian and Greek origin in particular have underpinned Robinvale's economic success as an irrigation powerhouse. Instead of adding more layers of bureaucracy, we should be looking at ways to streamline the process for bringing skilled migrants to regional areas. This could include faster processing times for regional sponsorships, reduced compliance burdens for regional employers and greater support for organisations that sponsor skilled migrants. When you consider the migrant workforce in my region and the inordinate percentage of my electorate officers' work spent in progressing migration matters, the government should consider a dedicated migration navigator in Mildura to streamline processing. It's not good enough to outsource expediting of visas to members of parliament offices where we have no jurisdiction. There has been a significant increase in Mallee small business constituents coming to me wanting me to help them to navigate the visa system. Some have been priced out of affording workers due to the TSMIT changes. Others can't afford migration agents or lawyers, and the department is not in a position to provide government guidance. It feels as though Labor, by design, are trying to crush small business into submission, into insolvency in record numbers, so that unionised big business and government-run agencies can theoretically step in to run the country. However, we on this side of the House pay attention to history and outcomes. We know that Labor's controlled economies do not benefit the regions, but rather capital cities, and therefore robs regions to buy votes in the inner cities. I urge the government to reconsider the provisions of this bill and to work with regional communities to develop policies that support their growth and development. After all, we've seen this movie before, Deputy Speaker. Labor comes in with rushed immigration legislation, leaving loopholes that need to be fixed later on. Our regional communities deserve better resources and better outcomes.